Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
All right, and that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, alongside my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. I mean, I had that amazing stand-up set a couple of days ago. I couldn't have gone as better as it went way better than I expected. There was people laughing. I think some people, some audience members after told me that they liked it. So I thought it was well received. And I'm talking about some of the people that wasn't quite familiar with me, because there was also more familiar that know me that enjoyed my set. But there was also some fans that were some audience members that saw and they liked it. I thought it was great. All the people that showed up. Like, nice crowd there over at a Brooklyn Comedy Club in the Williamsburg area of Brooklyn. Also, I have to say I also had a great appearance on the East Side Dave show. I mean the program. I'm sorry. I'm used to saying East Side Dave show all these years.
True. But it is, as you said, it's the Davey Mack Sports program. And Dan, you really did hit it out of the fucking park. I mean, if you haven't had a chance to check out this week's Davey Mack Sports program, we'll include a link in the description of this episode. Just because not only do they have you on as a guest, but they go through your entire comedy debut, really, at Brooklyn Comedy Club this past weekend. And it was really just phenomenal, man. And I agree with you, too, because actually, as Roy Harder was even saying on the show, the first row, you could tell, really wasn't too sure because they didn't know who you were at first. So they weren't really sure what they were seeing. But a couple of jokes in, you completely won them over, and they were all laughing their asses off. Really a phenomenal job, buddy. You did a great job.
Yep, that's right. I also maybe got to give it, since I was at yesterday's Cyclones game, the first round of the South Atlantic League play. I got to give a shout out to my friend, to some friends there, King Henry and Rick Viola. Got to set some love to those. They're the great people. Those two do an amazing job there with the Cyclones, and they're fans of the show. They're fans of the shows.
Very cool. So definitely give them a big shout out right there. And we got a lot to get into this week too, because not only did you have your comedy debut on Sunday, not only did you have your great performance on the Davey Mack Sports program from just yesterday, actually. You also found out a little bit later, because of your comedy debut, you were a little distracted at the moment, but you found out that your New York Football Giants kicked off the year with a terrific victory over the Tennessee Titans. What an awesome way to start the season, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was excited. I got my alert popped up on my phone that the Giants had won, and I was like excited. I probably grabbed a couple of a beer or two, and some dumplings from Vanessa's Dumplings, which is next door to the bar and the venue that I performed at, and watched the highlights of the game.
And you know what? Because to be honest, the rest of the show, aside from talking about your comedy and the Giants, is going to be a little bit of a venting thing for us, because as Met fans, we've watched our team struggle over the last week or so, as they just are really finding it very terribly difficult to have any consistency from an offensive perspective right now. Also, you had that stinker from Chris Bassett the other day. So the Mets have officially lost back-to-back homestands for the first time all year. They dropped a series to the crappy Nationals. Now they dropped a series to the crappy Chicago Cubs. So we'll get into that a little bit later because I want to start off with the good stuff. Also, a little bit later, we'll be talking about my frustration with the New York Jets and their head coach who shot his mouth off on Monday and then already backtracked it today. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Dan, let's start off with your Giants, man, because you know what? One thing that we talked about all summer, as soon as training camp started, was that there were two things that were really going to be big factors for the Giants this season, right? And the two things were the quarterback play of Daniel Jones and his ability to limit turnovers, which he didn't do on Sunday. He had a couple of really major turnovers. But we also talked about the health and the effect that Saquon Barkley would have on this New York Giants offense. As long as he's fully healthy. And boy, did he have a breakout game for the first time in a while this week, right?
Yeah, he was like unbelievable. Like he was expected and was excited about when we got him in that draft.
Yeah, man. I mean, the guy had 160 yards on the ground. He caught a couple of passes for 30 yards, and he ends up winning NFC Player of the Week. This is exactly the way you envisioned it when he went second overall.
Exactly. And they also got to give a props to the coach, Dave. I keep forgetting how to pronounce this guy's name. Dave
Dayball.
Dave Dayball. The guy seemed very fiery as a coach, and it paid off, especially in that game-winning drive when he decided we're going to go for it, and the team was full behind it, and we got that win. And from footage I've seen from some Giants fans I know that made the trip to Tennessee, felt like every Giants fan in the South went to that game.
You're probably right, man, because I do agree with you, too. The Giants fans did have a pretty good showing out there, which, is really encouraging, too, for the Giants because they haven't been good for a couple of years, just like the Jets, so you don't really expect them to travel well, especially in going up against a team like Tennessee, who is expected to be one of the better teams in football this year and have been for the last couple of years. So for the Giants to go down there and get a victory, in front of a semi-friendly crowd was very, very cool to see. A very great way for Brian Daboll to start off his career as Giants head coach. And like you said, too, it took guts, man, because obviously you found out about it later on, but what were you thinking when you found out that the Giants were down 2019 and he puts the ball in the hands of Saquon Barkley to push it up and run it right up the gut and take that 21-20 lead? Were you shocked that he actually went for two there?
I was shocked, and I was excited that he did that, and I was like exhilarated that we got that win.
No doubt about it. And one thing I really noticed too, of talking about Saquon Barkley this week specifically, is it always seemed like, even going back to his Penn State days, that Saquon, and in college he had the ability to do this, that he could make a couple of guys miss and turn a 20-yard run into an 80-yard run or a 100-yard run or whatever it may be, a touchdown. In the NFL, it's very difficult to do that. And he did it well his first year in the league, but then it caught up to him his second year, where guys started to learn his moves. And, he just wasn't taking what was given to him by the offensive line. In the NFL, you have to hit that daylight. Wherever there's a gap in that offensive line, you have to be able to hit it and go through it. And he wasn't really doing that with much effectiveness the last couple of years. But boy, he looked like a completely different runner this year from the guy that I've seen the last couple of years, where he was on a mission. He was not going to allow them to deny him. He was plowing through. He was going through those holes. And, you have to just tip your cap to Saquon Barkley for, doing that and changing his game enough that it keeps him healthy, because that's what you have to do. The name of the game is staying healthy.
Yeah, exactly. He did everything he needed to do. We got ourselves. We start our season on the right foot.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did want to bring up to you too is that the Giants now are in a strange position because, as we've talked about in the past, this whole summer, um, the prospects for the Giants for their season, still aren't really high. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people aren't necessarily picking them to, go to the NFC Championship game this year. As we talked about for a lot of this year, this is kind of a rebuilding year for the Giants, but getting that first win is awesome, no doubt about it. But, with the injury to Dak Prescott in Dallas now, and he's going to be down until probably a good 8 weeks, I'd say maybe early November is the next time we'll probably see Dak healthy in an NFL game. That really opens the door for the Giants because the Commanders don't scare me at all. The Philadelphia Eagles are more up and down than any team I've ever seen. Sometimes they're unbeatable and sometimes they're worse than the Jets. So, you don't really know what you're getting out of the Eagles. So it's very interesting. Like, what's your thoughts on that, Dan? I know you have tried to be level-headed this whole time, this whole offseason, and you kind of didn't expect a playoff run out of this Giants team, but with the way things have broke the last week, are you kind of allowing yourself to dream a little bit?
I think it might be possible. It could be. It's like all those things that have happened seem to be a game changer all of a sudden. And now knows what'll happen, but I just know this whole season's gonna be relevant and I'm gonna be wanting to watch, and hopefully this time even going into, if we fast forward to what I call the second quarter of the season, which is around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Which what I call begins the second quarter of the season. Second quarter of the season. I feel like I call that the third quarter. The first quarter of the season I feel ends around Halloween. So
yeah.
Third quarter of the season, I'll probably be wanting to watch while I'm eating my Thanksgiving dinner. I want to eat my Thanksgiving dinner in front of the TV.
Yeah, man. And, me and you have talked about this Cowboys Giants game, a lot over the last few, episodes and everything like that, just talking about football and being relevant by Thanksgiving and, going into December, playing meaningful games and all this kind of stuff. And we've mentioned the Giants and Cowboys multiple times playing. But it's very interesting now because nobody really thought that game, that game could have meant the Giants were relevant still, but nobody really thought that was going to be a game that could potentially impact the division and who wins it. And, what the, if the Giants have a chance or if they can stand in the way of the Cowboys winning the division. So it's really interesting to see that the way this worked out, that's the great thing about the NFL too, is that it really is a week to week league because you never know what's going to happen. One big injury or one big, great game played like Saquon Barkley had this past week can completely change the complexion of your season in the blink of an eye.
Yep, that's exactly. And looks like it's going to happen. And I'll be, won't be as calm as I was last year on Thanksgiving this year, right? It'll be full Giants fan Daniel mode on Thanksgiving in front of that TV, right?
Exactly. And hey, that's just a terrific way to kick off the season for the Giants. As a Jets fan, I was sitting over here jealous because I'm sitting here and obviously the Giants played at 4:00. So they started after the Jet game was basically over. But, telling you right now, man, I woke up on Sunday morning. I was excited. I put my Jets jersey on. I was getting ready to, you know, watch the Jets and just, you know, hope that we see a little bit of this draft coming to fruition and some progression from these guys. And man, I'm just telling you what I witnessed on that day was just depressing. The Jets didn't convert their first third down until there was a minute left in the game. They were down 24-3. And okay, at that point, it's garbage time. So I'm not even really paying attention to that so much. As far as I'm concerned, the Jets didn't convert a third down in that game. You know, it was just such a terrible, lackluster performance by the offense. You know, obviously, I know you probably weren't paying too much attention to it because you were getting ready for your gig. But when you saw what happened in that Jet game, what was your reaction?
I was thinking like, oh my God, poor Joe Beningo. His heart might have stopped. And I could only imagine. I was saying, man, I could only imagine what Ira from Staten Island's son was going to be telling me about what his father was going to be like. Because I'm sure you heard me mention, I happen to know I'm Facebook friends with Ira from Staten Island's son.
And yeah, you've mentioned that, and Ira from Staten Island, big time Jet fan, obviously.
And his son was telling me, yeah, they were at the game, and I did notice some video that was shared from that game. Like, I thought it was a nice little thing they did during the national anthem. I mean, there was someone performing the national anthem, but the crowd all decided to put in the national anthem singer and singing the national anthem.
Yeah, it really and that's actually a great call because I meant to bring that up, but I forgot about it. You really hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, that was such a great moment, you know, and it was egged on by the Jets coach Robert Saleh, who was trying to get the crowd into it, and the crowd, you know, got into it, and everybody was just enjoying, this great moment, you know, on 9/11, just a really cool thing at MetLife there. And, you know, man, I mean, to go out there and just lay an egg like that afterwards, you know, to have zero offensive production. And then they had, on the first play of the game, they had Michael Carter, their second year running back, run for 19 yards. So when I see that, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this Jets offense is looking like something right now. And then everything just fell apart. Joe Flacco ended up dropping back for 59 times. He's 38 years old. The Jets cannot be doing that 59 times, having this quarterback do that. He's not built for that. You know, you're not using him to his best ability there either. You know, and then they didn't run the ball effectively after that, or that much, to be honest. They really didn't use their tight end that they signed, one of their big tight ends, CJ Uzomah, who, you know, the Jets had 84 offensive snaps that game. Uzomah only played on 23 of them. This is a guy who was supposed to be your quarterback safety net, and they had him only on about a quarter of their offensive plays. Crazy. Same thing with first-round pick, number 10 overall, Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. The Jets, he didn't even get on the field until the third or the fourth drive. Just terrible offensive management by the Jets. You know, Mike LaFleur, you know, sometimes people liked him last year. Sometimes people hated him last year. I don't know what to think of this guy. And I don't know what to think of Robert Saleh either, because once again, Dan, what did you think of these nutty comments that Robert Saleh made the day after the Jets once again crapped the bed? And what are you thinking on Monday when it comes out that Robert Saleh says that he's going to be keeping receipts of anybody making fun of the Jets after they just lost their latest game? They deserve to get made fun of.
Yeah, exactly. It was like horrible. I took a look at the highlights, and I think after the comedy show I was watching Sports Nights. I took a look at the highlights.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And, you know, so when you look at the, you know, one thing too that is really just like blatantly obvious to me right now is you look at the two coaches and the two teams in New York right now for football, right? And you see Robert Saleh and you see Brian Daboll. And Brian Daboll seems like he has the pulse of his room. He seems like he has the ability to inspire his team and galvanize them. And, the old saying that used to come, I used to say all the time when Rex Ryan was the head coach of the Jets, it just seems like his team wants to run through a wall for him. And that's how I see Brian Daboll with the Giants. It just seems like his team wants to run through the wall for him and, prove him right and prove that they're a good team and they have a good future ahead of them. For the Jets, I don't feel that. I feel like they try to make you feel like that's the case, but I don't think it actually is. I don't know. I don't know what to think of this coach. With the Jets, I feel like I'm completely lost right now because I don't know what to think of the coach. I don't know what to think of the quarterback because once again, he's hurt. And by the way, that goes on his resume. All the injuries, the Sam Darnold injuries go on his resume. Same thing with Zach Wilson. That's on your resume. You have to take injury prone off your list. And, right now for the Giants, Daniel Jones is staying healthy for them. And that's a big key, right, Dan? Just being healthy can, be a big difference in your ability to get better on the field.
Yeah, exactly. He needs to continue to stay off the injured reserve and up, and hopefully he'll get an extension.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap up on the football here, there's one more thing I did want to mention. So when I was watching the Giants on Sunday, I turned it on and they were down 10-0 already. And I was just shaking my head, saying to myself, what the hell is going on? How are they already, how is this game 10-0? And I'm watching it, and Daniel Jones is running the offense here. And he's got them at the half field mark. And then he gets sacked and he fumbles the ball and turns the ball over terribly. Just a terrible, terrible turnover. This is after he already had a big interception. So, luckily after that, he was able to put a cork on his turnovers and, he was able to just, feed Saquon Barkley the ball as much as they needed the rest of the game. And they ended up coming out on top. But what do you think, Dan, after this one game? Obviously it's an up and down performance from Daniel Jones. Did this game instill any confidence in you in Jones, or is he still kind of like a question mark for you?
I feel Jones is in a step in the right direction. The guy looked like he had a little rust. He hadn't played a regular season game in over a year.
Mm-hmm.
So he's still trying to get those little jitters out, I felt like.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I can see that. And not to mention too, one thing I think we all have to take into consideration with early NFL football is that these guys aren't on the field in the preseason anymore. Me and you grew up during the days where these guys were doing 2-a-days over the summer and they're busting their asses and, they're working their asses off. And these guys are playing at least 3 of the 4 preseason games, getting a lot of snaps in game action. That's not the case anymore. At all. Joe Flacco played maybe 5 or 6 series the whole preseason, and Daniel Jones probably didn't play much more than that. I know Daboll kind of had them, out a little bit longer than other coaches have in, I believe, the 3rd preseason game the week before they played the Jets. But, even so, still very, very little preseason action. So I do agree with your assessment that there was a little bit of rust early on. And I think what Daniel Jones really needs to do too is, especially if you're going to have that run game from Saquon, is he's got to be a game manager. He's got to turn himself into Mark Sanchez on those 09 Jet teams where he just managed the game. He's got to be like a Trent Dilfer, just manage the game. Let the other parts of your team do the heavy lifting and just, don't get in your own way, right?
Yeah, exactly. No need to go above your head
Yep.
and play to the ability that's around you and the team that you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you, man. And the Giants right now, they have a chance. These first 4 games of the season are winnable games. I mean, I don't think they're going to be 4-0, but if you came out of this 2-2, hey, that's a lot better than these couple of years where we've seen the Jets and the Giants both start off 0-5, 0-6, 0-7, and you're just thinking to yourself, when the hell is a New York football team going to actually win a game? And the Giants got that off the list already. Week 1, the Jets haven't won in September since Sam Darnold's first game in his career. Week 1 in 2018. That was the last time the Jets have won a game in September. So it's definitely not to be taken lightly. Any win you get in this league, that's one thing that these last few years have really taught me as a fan, is that you can't discount a win, because and you can't belittle a win. You can't take wins for granted, because sooner or later you could be out in the desert like I've been for 10 years and like you've been for at least the last 5. And you're going to be out in that desert and you're going to be thinking to yourself, oh man, remember when my team could at least be 8-8 and they were slightly competitive? That's not the case anymore. Not, or at least it hasn't been the last few years. So let's hope that we're both on that track back to relevant football, right, Dan?
Exactly. Well, keep me wanting to watch every week.
Exactly. That's all you want to do. You want to be able to sit down and just enjoy the game. That's it. And were you going to add something to that, Jen?
Exactly, and have that loud Meadowlands crowd back.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not like these games they had, especially during COVID, where there was no fans there. You want to see a pumped up MetLife Stadium. That's why it was really cool, like you mentioned, with the Jets and the fans singing the national anthem on 9/11. That was really cool. You saw emotion. You saw people getting into it. Saw people getting pumped up. And there's going to be more of that this Sunday when the Giants have their home opener. And that's, obviously the Jets fans' fun ended as soon as the whistle blew and the game started. But the the Giants, man, you guys are going to be packing the house on Sunday, and it's going to be a great atmosphere. And who's that against? It's against Carolina, I believe, right?
It's Carolina.
Yeah. So you guys get Carolina and Baker Mayfield. The Jets are going to be in Cleveland next week playing the Cleveland Browns. So 2 interesting games and 2 winnable games, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll probably have to have the whole. I'll be doing the 2-screen thing because it's on the same time as the Met game. So I'll probably have the Giants game on my tablet while I have the Mets game on the TV.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's definitely going to be a 2-screen day, and for the foreseeable future, that there's going to be a lot of that, because even with the way they've been crappy lately, the Mets are going to be in the playoffs.
Plus, you got October hockey coming up in October.
Oh yeah, getting going again as the Rangers opened up rookie development camp today, so they're having those games. It's going to coincide over the weekend with the Philadelphia Flyers. They're going to play 2 rookie games over the weekend before real NHL training camp starts just next week. So we're right on the precipice of the NHL season and the NBA season getting started up. Baseball playoffs about to kick into full gear, and the NFL season's underway. So a lot to get into. All right, and now we got the football out of the way, as we had to get a lot off our chest with that. Obviously, a great week of week 1 of NFL football. What we're going to turn the page to now is a little baseball. Shockingly, I know me and Dan never talk about baseball, so we're gonna start talking a little Mets here. And obviously, things aren't going as swimmingly as we would have liked over the last week or so. However, one good thing is, as we just discussed before we came on the air today, the Braves are down 4-1. No, well, actually, I'm sorry. That game has gone final, right, Dan?
Up, it had just gone final. I noticed the end of the game when I on my laptop. You can't see it here, but I'm looking. I have my laptops in front of me that I was able to get a glance at the game.
Very cool.
The
Yeah, very cool, man. As Carlos Rodon took out Charlie Morton today for the Braves, as the San Francisco Giants take 2 out of 3 in that series. Really, really big, big for the Mets that they lost that game, because the Braves won last night, cutting the lead back down to a half game, where they're even in the loss column. And at this time of year now, really the big thing is loss column, because that impacts your win percentage more than anything. So you really have to just make sure that you have less losses than the team behind you or in front of you in the Braves case. But what have your feelings been? So we saw last Friday night going into Saturday, the Mets slip out of first place for the first time in a while, since April 11th. It was the first time the Mets have slipped out of first place. They since then have regained first place. They had it up to a game and a half. They lost the last two. The Braves lost in stunning fashion on Saturday and Sunday in Seattle. So really, Sunday was crazy, as they put up a 5 spot in the ninth inning to take a 7-6 lead, and then Kenley Jansen gave up a game-tying home run to Julio Rodriguez and a game-winning home run to Eugenio Suarez. So really cool if you're a Mets fan, but just stomach-turning if you're a Braves fan. And obviously the Giants would go out there and take the series now. But what were you going to say, Dan?
I was going to say, yeah, the last couple of days have been nerve-wracking. I can tell you, I'm going to be calm until the whole regular season's over. Then it's going to be another anxiousness, because it'll be the first time in a while we've had the Mets in the playoffs. So it's going to be. I don't think it'll be calm until the end of the season. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I agree, man. This looks like it's going to go down on the wire. And
I calm down. It'll be me having a burger and a Stella at Donovan's Pub after I had attended the parade, and he'll probably be there too, because as I said before, Kramer, you're invited to join me at after the parade at Donovan's in Woodside. If we whenever in the World Series, that's where I'm going to be after the parade.
And I'll absolutely take you up on that, buddy, and have a celebratory Stella with you in honor of Matt Iceman. And we'll be having let's just hope that we can even have that discussion, because we're so close to the playoffs. And Buck Showalter said something very interesting yesterday, where he said, sometimes finishing off a good season is the hardest part about it, where you get to the end of the season, basically where we are now, and you're kind of running out of gas a little bit. Everybody's got some bumps and bruises. There's always something nagging at these players. Some guys are coming off really long hot streaks and just starting to come back down to earth a little bit. Kind of like Jeff McNeil. Even though he had 2 hits yesterday, he did ground into a devastating double play. And you can make excuses, because on Tuesday, when in game 1 of this series, the Cubs starter that night really had good stuff. He had a slider with great movement on it. He had a fastball that he was using effectively on both sides of the plate. So the guy really did a great job. Last night, the guy the Mets couldn't hit last night didn't have great stuff. He had enough stuff to get by. Mets had a chance to get to him early, and they blew it. They just, the only thing they did last night was the Pete Alonso home run. Their inability to hit in the clutch. I mean, look, they come up with some big games against Miami. They blew out Pittsburgh 10-0 in the game we were doing the show during last week. But then they have these other games, like the last couple of days against the Cubs, where they just don't show up. The Up until Pete Alonso hit that home run in the ninth inning, two of the three hits came from Jeff McNeil. Nobody else was contributing. It's mind blowing, the way some of these guys. And look, I understand. Like I said earlier, it's a long season. There's going to be ebbs and flows, but this is crunch time. This is where you have to get it done, and it's just really disappointing to see the Mets hitting these doldrums right now.
Yeah, I have to say, it felt like that. I mean, it does feel like it's always hard to deliver that knockout blow sometimes. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you've ever played this old NES game, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, but
Absolutely.
cleaning up the guy, but just getting to that trying to deliver that knockout blow was the hardest part in that game. And it was a struggle, and somehow you made it past that struggle and delivered that knockout blow, especially when you got up to Tyson in that game.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I mean, and that's really is another analogy to what you said for, like finishing another team off, especially professionally, is one of the hardest things to do. These guys are getting paid to play baseball too, and same thing like you said in Mike Tyson Punch-Out. It's going to obviously get harder and harder and harder as you work your way up, especially when you're trying to just beat the guy and knock him out. So he's going to, be hard to beat most of the time. Then he's going to be really hard to beat for that last little bit of life that he has, But in baseball, it's very much the same, not only in the season, but in the game, which is why you have guys like Edwin Diaz and, the old Yankee Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman, and, all these elite closers. That's why you have them come in the ninth inning with this plus stuff, because it's crunch time and you want to win that game. You're in position to win the game and you do not want to blow it. And that's why you put the most effective pitcher in at that moment. And right now, for the Mets, obviously it's Edwin Diaz. He was a little shaky last night, but it's only because Buck hasn't used him right the last 2 weeks. Buck once again has been doing this crap with the bullpen. I mean, I'll give it to him because in yesterday's game, he at least used Lugo and he used Diaz and he used Ottavino while they were losing, but only because he was forced to, and he hasn't had to run these guys out. That's one thing that I think Buck really has to do more often, is don't just use those guys when you're winning. That's a great strategy from April to August. But once you get into September and October, you really have to just, obviously there are going to be games where you're going to have to throw Joely Rodriguez in there, and you're going to have to throw Michael Givens in there, and, a couple of these other guys, Adonis Medina, whatever, all these other guys. But
levers and keep the team in the game.
Yeah, you're going to have to use your best guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's when and this is the time of year for that. Also, I have to say, I really feel that Volkebron has been struggling. I think he really needs to maybe right now, get a look at Vientos in the DH spot. This guy looks like he's going to, I feel like he's gaining confidence as he's getting more at bats. Like, I noticed he kept hitting the ball hard, just not enough. I feel like he's gonna once he gets going.
I totally agree with you. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there, because I think Vientos should be given more opportunities than he's even been given so far. You don't want this kid coming up here sitting on the bench like you've had for Darren Ruff, which, by the way, me and you were talking about Darren Ruff and his ineffectiveness last week, and we were talking about how the Mets should bring up Mark Vientos. Now, unfortunately, this injury had the ability that we ended up bringing Vientos anyway, but with Starlin Marte, which I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the name right there. But so right now, in fairness to the Mets, Scherzer and Marte, two of their better players, are on the DL, so we can't kill them too much. But Darren Ruff, who me and you singled out last week, is 1 for his last 34. 1 for 34, and he's mostly playing against lefties who they bragged about. Oh man, Darren Ruff, you got to get this guy in the lineup against lefties. He kills lefties, this and that. We haven't seen that at all since he's been a Met. I mean, he had a couple of big hits his first week as a Met, really, for the most part. But after that, he hasn't done anything. 1 for 34? That's ridiculous. This guy's a veteran. And as soon as Buck put him up the other night, when the Mets had a chance, they had a chance to tie the game against the Cubs. They had the bases loaded, and you send up Darren Ruff instead of Mark Vientos. As soon as I saw Darren Ruff putting his batting helmet on, I knew the Mets weren't tying the game, and I knew the Mets weren't doing anything in that spot. And look, I'm sure Darren Ruff is a nice guy. I know Darren Ruff is a professional major league hitter, but I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing him going out there and not doing anything. And he's been doing that way too much lately. And another guy that I'd like to call out too, even though I was a big fan of him his first couple of weeks here as a Met, is Daniel Vogelback. Where is Daniel Vogelback? Daniel Vogelback's face should be on the side of a milk carton right now because he's nowhere to be found. What is this guy doing? He hasn't done anything. The only thing he's good for is a ground ball double play or a pop up to second base. I haven't seen that guy do anything in weeks, and drives me nuts. And the DH spot, they specifically acquired these two guys, Vogelback and Ruff, to improve the DH, and they haven't done anything in a month. It's infuriating. It's just like, I would rather see Vientos out there every day instead of either one of these guys.
Yeah, exactly. I felt Vogelback was a iffy trade. I felt like, come on, in the Steve Cohen era, they make a trade like this. This is more like a Wilpon move.
No doubt about it, man. You're 100% right about that. And don't forget, because I feel like both of those moves were really Wilpon moves. I think you're right about that, where Vogelback I felt a little bit better about. I still think giving up Colin Holderman was probably too much for Vogelback. I don't understand why they did that, but I guess Holderman's out for the year anyway now, so it doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there. But for Darren Ruff, don't forget, the Mets gave up 3 prospects for Darren Ruff. 3. It was Thomas Sapacki and 2 other guys. I forget who the other, they didn't give up any top 10 guys or top 30 guys, but it doesn't matter. Giving up 3 bodies. I don't care if they're dead bodies. Giving up 3 things for Darren Ruff is too much because Darren Ruff has stunk. Oh, and the other guy was J.D. Davis. You gave up J.D. Davis, who's been pretty good over there in San Fran since he went there. He's hit 5 home runs, which, by the way, is 5 more than Darren Ruff has hit in his time as a Met. And you gave up Thomas Sapecki, and you gave up another prospect for Darren Ruff. Was that really worth it? That seems like a really big swing and a miss there by the Mets.
Yeah, I felt that way, and I'm scratching my head on that one.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, we tried to rationalize it, and we tried to look at it from the Mets' perspective where, okay, J.D. Davis probably is near the end of the line here anyway. Thomas Sapacki's had a couple of stints in the major leagues, and he's gotten whacked every time. So, okay, and they gave up another marginal prospect, who I can't even remember right now. So, it's not that big a deal. But the fact of the matter is you gave up 3 assets for this guy.
Hold on, let me get the light on.
No problem. And as Dan throws the light on there now we turn to tonight where the Mets are actually trying to avoid a sweep at the hands of the Cubs at Citi Field, where the Cubs have the Cubs are 30 games under 500. That team is depleted. They've traded everybody. They have no pitching. Even though people want to point to the fact that the Cubs have a really good starters ERA since the All-Star break, that doesn't mean anything because their starters are going 4 or 5 innings every time out there. So you can't take their ERA that high into consideration because these guys aren't even the games against the Mets. These guys weren't pitching into the 7th or 8th inning. So I understand that their starters have been better since the All-Star break, but to say that their ERA is top ERA, that's very deceiving numbers. One other thing too, Jacob deGrom. deGrom pitched last night, 6 innings, 3 runs. What a joke that call was. With the call at first base, where the runner clearly had his foot on the grass, was in the throwing lane of it ended up being the catcher, but any infielder there. And he gets hit in the helmet, and the umpires don't call it. I've been watching baseball for 30 years. I've never seen a play like that where it's clear as day that he should have been out and the play should have been dead at that point. And that ends up costing deGrom 2 runs. So a 1-0 game because of 3-0 game, just because the umpire doesn't know what the hell's going on. How did all the umpires on the field miss that?
I have no idea how they missed that. I was fucking upset. I was like, man, this is why if I had a daughter, I would never let her date an umpire. That has daughters. Don't let your daughter date an umpire.
I saw you tweeted that last night. I was laughing my ass off. That's a good line. And it's true. I mean, that's why people hate umpires. It's like, and then after the game, he's not even admitting his mistake. They don't have to answer to anybody. It's not like they're sitting there doing a media call after the game. So this guy just gets to make a terrible call and then just go about his business. See you later. Just like Jim Joyce when he cost Andres Galarraga a perfect game a decade ago. Nothing happened to him. And the worst part is that at least back then, they didn't have replay. So you couldn't do anything about it. Today, they have replay, but for some reason, that specific play was not eligible for replay. That doesn't make any... How could that play not be eligible for replay? It's clear as day. All you have to do is look at it for 2 seconds. His cleat was on the grass. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, that was like clear. I mean, and like I said, if I had a daughter, I would not let her date an umpire. And like I said, don't let your daughters date umpires, especially if they're the offspring, especially the offspring of Angel Hernandez.
I knew it was going to come back to Angel Hernandez. Angel Hernandez, who, if you don't know, he's one of the worst umpires in baseball. He's constantly being called out by players across the league, just because he's a terrible umpire. And, he's been an umpire so long, which is crazy to think about. You remember he was the umpire back in 1998 that made a terrible call at home plate that cost the Mets a run, where Johnny Franco was so mad at that call that he had the ball in his hand and spiked it because he lost his mind in the moment and cost the Mets another run. So that ended up costing the Mets the game, and I'll never forgive Angel Hernandez for that moment. Much less all the other crap he's done.
I will never forget that game too. Why I remember watching that one on TV, being upset. So I feel you on that one.
Yeah, just another terrible call in the long list of terrible Angel Hernandez calls. But you know what? As we're starting to round down here a little bit, Dan, I did want to let's start painting a more bright picture for the Mets right now, because let's be honest. Okay, it's been a rough couple of games. The one thing that does sicken me is the fact that the Mets right now, before this game is being played tonight on Wednesday night as we're recording this show, the Mets have played. This recent stretch has been the easiest statistically with all the teams they're facing, the Nationals, the Pirates, the Cubs, etc. And the Marlins. it's the easiest 16 game stretch for the Mets this season, right? Right now, we're 11 games through that. Now, the Mets should be crushing these teams, but what the Mets record is now 5-6 through this time. Unacceptable. Totally, totally unacceptable. To drop 2 consecutive home series to teams that are 30 games under 500. Totally unacceptable. But
All the words of that meme. I don't know if you ever watched this cartoon called Adventure Time. There was a character. Remember that character Lemon Grab? That is unacceptable. I don't know if that was a good impression of Lemon Grab.
That was a better impression than I could do, so I tip my cap to you for that, sir. But,
Billy West, wait, if I'm correct, I think Billy West did the voice of Lemon Grab.
I think you're right about that. I think you're right. Billy West, one of the best.
I got to give props to the great Billy West. One of the 20 of this era.
I mean, Billy West, his voice is iconic at this point. He's done so many big cartoon voices. It's really incredible the length that guy goes to. So obviously here on Best Seat in the House podcast, we love Billy West. So got to give Billy West some love there. But
my age, if you remember Doug and Ren and Stimpy, you got to remember Billy West.
Oh yeah, and he does? I think he does Fry and Futurama, and so many big names you can think of.
And I feel like he's another one that I feel like has probably gotten influenced by the great Mel Blanc.
Oh yeah,
Mel Blanc has influenced so many generations of voice actors to the point that when I finally get to visit Southern California, I got to visit his grave.
Very cool. Very cool. I actually lived in Southern California and I didn't do that. So that's very cool, man. And as the right now the Met game is just about to get underway as we're recording this podcast. So let's paint a little bit of a brighter picture right now, Dan. So the Mets play this game tonight. They got to win this game, obviously. This is a big game.
I figured not only did I need to give Jabu room, I needed to maybe do something else to help wake up the bats. To wear my Mike Piazza jersey.
Yep, break out the blackout jersey. I love it. And just like, actually, Dan, you referenced this before we went on the air, and I want you to say it again. What did Mike Piazza say when they retired his number back in 2016? Because I was at that game and so were you.
And when you're looking for that big hit, look to that number 31 hanging there in the rafters.
Exactly. And I want the Mets to look at that. Look at the 31. Think about all the big hits he gets. Think about how beloved he is by this city and by the Mets fans and everything. That could be you. Just go out there and make it happen. Have these big moments and get into the playoffs and make some noise. Let's do it. Met fans are ready to explode. We want to see tonight against the Cubs. We want to see the 90th win of this so far incredible season, which think about this, Dan. This would be the 90th win of the season for the Mets. How many times has that happened? I mean, in your life, it would be one more than mine because I wasn't alive for 85. So let's think about this in your lifetime. 1985, they won 98 games. 1986, they won 108. 1988, they won 100 even. After that, they won 90 again in 1990, but they didn't make the playoffs. In 1999, they won 97 games. In 2000, they won 94 games. In 2006, they won 97 games again. And 2015, they won 90 games even. So if you think about that, it's 7 or 8 times in our entire lifetime that the Mets have won 90 games? That's freaking crazy to think about, especially when you can pretty much count the last 30 years of 90-win seasons for the Yankees of our lives. So, these type of seasons for the Mets at least come along every so often. So you really, really have to appreciate it, right?
Exactly. I appreciate it. I mean, I'm excited that I'm turning on a TV and I'm in the middle of a pennant race.
Yeah.
And instead of realizing, yeah, it's another one of those Octobers that I'm just watching it, rooting for the Yankees to lose.
Yeah, exactly. And instead of rooting for the Yankees to lose, we want to root for the Mets to win because that's what we are. We're Mets fans. We want to get that championship. You know, they haven't won a championship in going on 40 years. I mean, it's going to be 36 years this year. So let's try to cut that out. Let's try to end that shit. And let's hope the Mets come out swinging tonight because last night I don't know if you saw his interview after the game, but Pete Alonso was insistent that the Mets were going to turn things around. And unfortunately, to me, what that really reminded me of was last year in Philadelphia after the Mets lost first place to the Braves. Pete Alonso was also insistent that the Mets were going to turn things around then. And that was in August. And we all know they didn't. They blew it. They sunk to third place, and the Braves won the World Series. So what I will say to Pete Alonso is I love the positivity, but back it up. That's it. That's all I have to say to you. Back it up. Just like we said earlier with Robert Saleh with the Jets, you can have all these words. They can all feel nice and make you feel great and everything, but it doesn't mean a damn thing unless you back it up. Right, Dan?
Exactly. And I'm hoping we do that. I'm hopeful we do that. This team, I feel like, looks in better shape than what happened in 2021. So I'm just hoping, my fingers crossed. This is going to be a roller coaster of emotions the next 2 months. So it's
Yeah.
going to, looking forward to it all play out.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I mean, the last time the Mets made it on a run, I mean, I'm not really counting 2016 because that was a one and done. But 2015, nobody really thought the Mets were going to do anything against the Dodgers. They really didn't expect the Mets to beat the Cubs. And then everybody expected the Mets to beat the Royals, and they didn't. So let's just take this as it comes. Let's enjoy it. And just like you said, it's going to be a roller coaster for the next 2 months. And yeah, it could lead us until early November. And with that, we are winding down here. We only have a couple of minutes left. But before we get out of here, Dan, I did want to touch really quick on Aaron Judge and his pursuit of the Yankees record, because you know what, to be honest, the Yankees really aren't playing meaningful games. The Yankees crapped out for about a month, but they're back on track. They are having they had a great series against the Rays this past weekend, taking 2 out of 3, regaining control of the division, even though they never really lost in the first place. But their perception is that they regained control of the division. They went out, and Aaron Judge last night just put on a show, hitting home runs number 56 and 57 in Boston. He's a killer at Fenway in his career. So the Yankees are on cruise control. They're going to win the East most likely, even though it looked a little scary for a couple of days. But they're back on track. What do you think, Dan? Right now we're at 57 for Aaron Judge. How many home runs do you think this guy's going to end up with this year?
I don't know. I think he might end up somewhere around the 60 range.
Well, I mean, he's in the 60 range right now. Like,
end up breaking the record.
Yeah. So you think that he's going to surpass Roger Maris?
Yeah, I have a feeling he's going to surpass Roger Maris.
Now, do you think, and I mean, it's a long shot, but do you think he has any shot at Barry Bonds 73?
I don't think there's any shot at that. I feel he would have had to be on a much quicker pace. Like, he would have had to have been closing that a lot earlier in the month to really have a shot at it. Plus that, I have a feeling now also at this point of the season, at the pace he's hitting at, he might get one of those, what Keith Hernandez calls abracadabra walks.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be getting a lot of those, I believe, down the stretch. No doubt about it. And he already has been, too. I mean, the smart teams have not been pitching to him. And, one other interesting thing, too, is that not only would he be is he going for the Yankee record right now? He's going for the American League record for home runs in a single season because uh, right now he has, I believe, the number is what is it? Right, right now the only three guys to have more than 61 home runs in a season are Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa. All three of those guys were playing in the National League when they did those seasons. So the American League and Yankee record for home runs in a season is still 61. So, and a lot of people don't like the other numbers anyway because they're obviously clouded, but still very, very historical, uh, you know, path coming up here for Aaron Judge. And it's going to be a really fun watch to see how things pan out for him coming down the stretch. One other thing too is that an interesting stat I read yesterday at the end of the day. So right now, Aaron Judge leads the league with 57 home runs. The person behind him is Kyle Schwarber with 37. Now, yesterday it was the first time since 1928 when Babe Ruth had a 28 home run lead over the guy who was second in the league behind him this late in the season. It's the first time since 1928 that somebody has had a 20 plus home run lead between the number one guy and the number two guy in baseball since 1928. So that's the historical level of numbers that Aaron Judge is putting up right now, dominating the league in a level we haven't seen since Babe Ruth in 100 years. So pretty cool stat to chew on there for a minute, right, Dan?
Yep, it is, and it's going to be a huge contract for Aaron Judge. And
oh yeah, you got that right. They're going to be backing the Brinks truck up to his door any month now.
Yep, exactly. The whole armored van and everything.
You got that right, man. And all right, so we're just about done with this right now. And but we do have to promote. We're gonna make this a little short this week because the Mets are starting right now. We've had a lot to get to today. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna not do Stump the Bow this week. We're gonna pick it back up next week and do Stump the Bow. So I really didn't have a chance to promote it this week either. So I'm gonna promote it on social media. Please send us your questions, any sports question you got for the professor over here, Mr. Daniel Bobo Kurlan, as he's already 1 for 1. He answered his first question last week when we did the first round of Stump the Bow. So do us a favor and send us your questions. We'll have a lot of fun with that next week. Also, go out of your way to watch this week's Eastside Dave show. Dan, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
If the Mad Dog, aka the Marquis, wants to maybe submit a question, that be I hope it gets to that point where the Marquis submits a question during that Super Bowl contest they used to do every year.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Anybody, you can send it in any way you want. If you want, send to us on Twitter. Send to us. We have an email, bestseatinthehousepodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send it to us that way. So any way you can, reach out to us. It's going to be a blast, and we're going to keep it going next week. We just had a lot to get to this week. And before we get out of here, though, I do want to plug, like I said, check out the Davey Max Sports Program. Those guys had a great show with Dan earlier this week. So if you want to laugh your ass off, check that out. And Dan's, you'll be able to see his whole stand-up routine and everything on there. Very, very fun. Once again, Dan, I just want to tell you what a great job you did, buddy.
Yep, I was great. I really enjoyed doing that show. I hope everyone likes it. And I was well received by the audience. And I hope everyone that hasn't watched that episode, the Eastside Dave Sports Program, watches it and loves it. Also, you can also find me my Twitter account, Bobo 103 NYC. Also on Instagram, Bobo 7A, and Daniel Kurlan on YouTube, of course.
Yeah, so make sure and do yourself a favor and check that stuff out. Also subscribe and like us on YouTube, Best Seat in the House podcast. You can check us out on Twitter at bsith_podcast. You can check us out on Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast. And also check me out on Twitter at my last name, Cramer, NY. So once again, thank you everybody for tuning in and having fun with us this week. It's been a great time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe the show's page.
What's that, buddy?
Get everyone to like and subscribe the show's page.
Absolutely. Like and subscribe us. And also, we're up to we're coming up to another big number on Twitter. We got like 270 or so followers. Once we hit 300, we'll be giving away something again, Dan, right? Isn't that right?
Yep, that's right. Hopefully we'll have another little thing to give away once we get to 300.
Exactly. So we're coming up on that. Make sure to like it and subscribe to us and follow us, and you'll be in that mix. So once again, thanks for joining us. I'm Rob Cramer. This is Daniel Bobo Kurlan, and this is the Best Seat in the House podcast.